Welcome to Investors Guide. You're watching ET now. Thank you so much for joining in. Now, this is a really interesting time in India. We're headed for elections. Everybody's debating politics over dinner parties. But what doesn't change is this show. This is your one-stop guide. We're going to answer all of your questions. And remember, if you're a long-term investor and you have a plan in place, you're putting money away every month, things like elections actually, in earnest, do not really affect your money in the long term. And by long term, I mean 20 years, 15 years, 30 years. Those kind of investors have nothing to worry about. But if you are worried, write to us. Our email ID is on your screen right now, or you can find me on Twitter, and it'll be our pleasure to answer your questions on the show. Our first question comes in from Parashuram Shetty, who's 29 years old, writes in from Singapore. Now, he wants help with his investments. Dhirendra is a young man. He's doing really well, but he's looking to retire in India eventually. So he wants to form some sort of retirement corpus in India for the long term. He tells us he only has a mother who depends on him right now, and he's single. He's looking to get married in the next 2 to 3 years. And he sent us so much information, which is a good thing because then it helps us build a good answer for him. I want to start by talking about his insurance policies. He has no health insurance, although he is insured by the employer in Singapore. He also doesn't have a term cover as of now. He has some, ULIP, and he has some money-back policies that I'm not very pleased with. He wants to know, first of all, if he should buy a term cover in India or should he buy a term cover in Singapore. Let's first talk about health insurance, Dhirendra. He might be covered in Singapore. Should he get a health cover for his mother, who depends on him? And secondly, should he buy a term cover for himself in Singapore? What would you like him to do?
For his mother, he should certainly go for a health insurance cover here. And about the term cover, it's entirely a matter of the pricing and the claims ratio, or the quality of the insurance and the kind of premium he will be paying. So he can do that comparison, and that can be very easily done because today all the life insurance term cover, he can do the pricing or do the validation of the price at any of the aggregators' website.
Let's look at his first goal, Dhirendra, and that's the wedding that's coming up in the next 2 or 3 years. And of course, there's no hard target. He's not going to get married in exactly 2 years from now, so it'll need to be flexible. Where can he invest that money? I
would like that money to be in a short-term bond fund or ultra short-term bond fund, simply because it will be more tax efficient. It will not be, it will be tax efficient, and today they are yielding decent return.
All right, so what I'm going to do is on your screen right now, I'm going to put up the list of short-term funds that Dhirendra has recommended for the year. Dhirendra, he has a question about the NRE deposit that we've talked about on the show. He wants to know if that makes more sense than using a mutual fund for anything. Now, given his goals, given that he might need the money at any point, he wants to take it back to Singapore, he wants it to be repatriable, does it still make sense for him to use a short-term fund?
Yes, it makes sense to use the short-term fund because I'm looking at this primarily as a wedding expense, and that money will earn 8%. And the money lying in any mutual fund, money invested in any mutual fund is on a repatriable basis for NRIs.
All right, so we hope that answers your question. Let's also look at his long-term investments, Dhirendra. Now, he's looking at building a retirement corpus over the next few years. He has a home loan that takes care of all of his tax saving that he might want to do under Section 80C. But let's look at him putting money away for the long term. He has 3 ELSS. Do you want him to continue with those investments? Would you like him to pick up one of our portfolios instead?
Ignoring the 3 ELSS, because those ELSS, the ELSS funds are good, and he can pull that money out just to keep it better organized. He should seriously consider the money which will be left from that 15 lakh rupee which he has accumulated so far. What will be his creating a provision for the emergency purpose and the wedding expense. All the money besides that should be spread over the next 12 months. And that apart, the additional 50,000 rupee from here on can well go into an aggressive growth fund or our growth portfolio, depending on how aggressively he wants to approach it.
Our aggressive portfolio is on your screen right now. Now remember, you have to first of all get insurance, term insurance for yourself, keeping in mind the fact that you will get married soon enough and start a family as well. Health insurance to cover your dependents, whether that's your mother or your grandmother who live back home in India. And of course, once you start investing in long-term equity, Dhirendra, they're giving you an option of our aggressive growth portfolio that's on your screen right now. If you have any more questions about putting money away, feel free to write to us. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen. Let's take another question then. We have one that's come in from Sanjay Kapoor. Dhirendra, he watched our New Year special show where we talked about the top funds to invest in 2014. Now, he wants to ask you about some specific funds, the SBI Magnum Emerging Business and the Quantum Long-Term Equity, which were part of that list of top funds of 2014. He wants to know again why you've picked these two funds. Let's talk about the first one then, SBI Magnum Emerging Business. Those returns are on your screen of that fund. Dhirendra, why does this make your list for the top fund of 2014?
No, this is an outstanding fund but has not done well in very recent past. And one should not give up on these funds. Your selection should not be guided by the very recent performance. If you look at 5-year return, 10-year return, 3-year return of these funds, it still beats most of the peers. Of course, this kind of fund in particular, if it goes wrong with one or two bet, it's an aggressive fund. It assumes risk and it more than adequately rewards for the risk that it assumes. And you have to provide for the margin of error. Once in a while it goes wrong. Quantum Long-Term Equity Fund, I like it for two primary reasons. One is that this fund plans to be a value-oriented fund, and value-oriented fund tend to underperform on time. But there is one advantage of this fund, that it has the lowest expense. Not only lowest expense, half as much expensive as most other well-performing funds. So I would say that this fund always has an advantage of 1.25% superior performance compared to any other actively managed equity fund. And any fund which has been loaded with FMCG and technology disproportionately will look very nice today. But the reverse will also be true. So yeah, these are the kind of mild underperformance which you have to take into stride.
Well, he also has another question, Dhirendra, and this is interesting. He says, in your aggressive growth portfolio, only 2 of those funds have made it to your top funds of 2014 list. There are 2 funds out of the equity funds that have not made it to the list, which is IDFC Premier Equity Plan A and UTI Opportunities. Now, even though these funds might not be on the top to buy list of 2014, why are we still holding on to them? And do you believe that they will continue to perform the way they have?
The funds in our portfolio are good. We normally do not encourage frequent changes in the portfolio. And also, there are tax implications of making changes in our portfolio.
All right, so in any portfolio, you should remember that every year will have a different set of top performers. But what we're looking for in a portfolio is something that performs over a longer period of time. If you're looking at 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, you want something that gives you steady returns, which is why there are no changes in that portfolio right now. These are funds we've been holding on to for a very long time. If you have any questions about our portfolios or the lists on the show, feel free to write to us. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen. One last question in this segment. Kamal has written in. He's just been blessed with a baby girl. Well, congratulations, Kamal. He wants to invest with a time horizon of 18 to 20 years to accumulate a corpus of about 40 lakh rupees for his daughter. He wants to know where he should be investing that money, both to create the corpus and save tax. There are several child-specific investment plans available in the market. Are those the best option for someone like him?
No, they are not the finest option. In fact, when choosing an investment, one should look at cost, one should look at diversification, and one should look at portability. If the investment is not doing well, your ability to move it elsewhere, and of course tax efficiency, which comes with equity. And given this time frame, he should approach it in 2 manners. One is that he should just increase his review his term cover and how much coverage he has. And now, because he has one more dependent in his family, he should increase that. That is one. And that apart, I would the simplest form of approaching this goal will be choosing a balanced fund, choosing a good balanced fund and investing every month. If you have a lump sum investment, still don't make that lump sum investment, spread it over time. At least spread it over the next 12 months or 18 months. That's the way to approach it. And keep it this simple. All the accumulation, all the gains on this fund will be tax-free, because a balanced fund which has more than 65% into equity is tax-free if held for over 1 year.
On your screen right now, the options that Dhirendra has given you. If you have any more questions, write to us. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen. And remember, if you now have a small family, you have to have insurance. You have to have both life insurance and health insurance. Do that before you do anything else. Welcome back. You're watching Investors Guide on ET Now. Thank you for staying with us. It's time for our product review. And this week we're looking at the HDFC Growth Fund. Avan is here to give us an introduction. Avan.
Thanks for that, Faye. Our fund in focus this week comes from the mighty HDFC equity offering. Unfortunately, like all other equity funds from HDFC, this fund has had a rough ride for the last 2 years. Typical to the fund house, it focuses on companies with strong balance sheets whose business models depend on domestic demand. The fund has been rewarding its investors over the long term, and over its 14-year history, it has given its investors an annualized return of 18.12%. But even though it ranks 10 out of 140 over the 10-year chart, this fund is currently at the bottom of its 1-year chart. The fund manager prefers to avoid areas of the market that he considers expensive and back his investment ideas with conviction. The strategy can result in investments that go against the norm over the shorter periods of time. For instance, investing in certain out-of-favor public names while steering clear of select technology and healthcare companies that were deemed expensive has resulted in the fund delivering a poor showing thus far in 2013. Over the last year, the fund has generated a return of 7%, only half of the 14% of the category average and far lower than the 23% of the top performer ICICI Prudential Dynamic. With nearly 70% of its portfolio in large cap stocks, this fund has trimmed its exposure toward mid caps to offer its investors more security. Let's bring in some numbers to get you a better outlook of the fund's performance over the years. If you invested 1,000 rupees in this fund when it launched, you would have 8,141 rupees today. So should you give up and pull your money out, or does this fund still have some fight in it? Let's find out. With that, it's back to you, Faye.
All right, Avan, thank you for that information. Dhirendra, HDFC Growth Fund. Now, we know that the entire basket of equity funds from HDFC have had a rather rough year, and a lot of investors are rethinking those funds. This one in particular was rated 4 stars the last time we talked about it on the show. In the meantime, since then, it's dropped down to 2 stars on value research. It's currently rated at 128 in its category out of 130 odd funds. It's really slipped in performance. Should anybody watching right now who has this fund in their portfolio continue to hold on to it?
Yeah, I think one should look at this fund very closely, and one should be giving this fund no more than 6 months, because I'm thinking that 2.5 years this fund has been struggling. It has been wrong, and last time round, all the funds, all the equity funds of HDFC were poised very differently. I'm referring to June, July 2013, and it did not work to their advantage. That was and all these funds suffered. Once again, these funds are configured very differently to benefit from a change in the complexion of the market, and if that does not happen over the next 3 to 6 months, I think it will be time to look for something which is better spread. All the big large funds of this fund family, this fund house, has suffered on account of taking a view which has not turned to be right.
If you've been holding on to this fund for a while, it hasn't impressed you from what looks like around May 2013, might make sense to hold on for a few months more. And of course, we'll be tracking this fund on a regular basis on this show. Dhirendra, what's your final rating of the HDFC Growth Fund?
Based on how the fund has done, and it was at the bottom of the pack for nearly 2 years now, I would say that it's not becoming a compelling option. But yes, one has to look at a full market cycle, and so I would still give it a 3 star. I would still give it a moderate fund, which is little above our risk-adjusted rating scale.
3 stars there for the HDFC Growth Fund on Investors Guide. If you have any questions about this fund or the review, feel free to write to us. Email ID is at the bottom of your screen. It's time to move on to our very popular hold or sell segment. Rohit Mehra has written in from Mumbai, Dhirendra. He tells us that he's been investing 40,000 rupees in a list of funds for the last few years. He wants to increase his investment now by an additional 15,000 rupees every month. He wants to create a corpus of 10 crore rupees over the next 10 years, and he wants to know if his list of investments are on track. So let's first take a look at his large cap funds. He has SBI Blue Chip, the ICICI Prudential Focus Blue Chip, Canara Robeco Large Cap Fund, And he has an index fund, the Franklin India Index Fund, which is a Nifty tracker, so that makes it large cap as well. Now, of these 4 funds, what do you think is the merit of this list? They are all good performers.
Yeah, they're all good performers, but I find a contradiction here as well. If you look at picking 3 funds and 75% of his money going into large caps or well-defined large caps, 25% going into the index fund. So I don't see a plan here. And I feel that when investing for next 10 years, he can do without having such a tight framework. He should not have a large cap fund. At best, he should have the multi-caps and the large and mid-cap fund.
All right, let's also look at his mid-cap funds. He has HDFC Mid-Cap Opportunities, BNP Paribas Mid-Cap Fund, and the ICICI Prudential Dynamic Fund, which is a dynamic fund, not specifically mid-cap. Of these 3 funds, Dhirendra, are they all good choices? Should he hold on to all of them?
Yes, they are outstanding. If I have to choose 1 or 2 mid-cap fund, it will be these 2. And if I have to, ICICI Prudential Dynamic is just the appropriate kind of fund for his goal. A fund which invests all across the market and has a compelling history. And if he has, 2-3 more such fund, that should take care of his, goals without spreading his portfolio wildly.
He's obviously someone who takes your advice very seriously. He has 2 international funds in his portfolio, the Birla Sun Life International Equity Fund and the Franklin US Opportunities Fund. I know Franklin US Opportunities is something you've been recommending on the show on a regular basis. Should he hold on to both of these funds?
Yes, even Birla Sun Life International Plan A is an excellent fund. And it is a better diversified fund compared to US Opportunity Fund, Franklin US Opportunity Fund.
The last on his list is HDFC Multiple Yield Fund. This is an impressive fund, Dhirendra, but does it fit in with his goal? Would you like him to hold on to this fund?
It has been an outstanding fund in its category among the conservative debt-oriented hybrid funds. But given his goal and given the kind of return he's expecting and risk he's willing to assume, this is a very inappropriate position in his portfolio.
All right, Dhirendra, when you look at his portfolio now of 10 funds that are well chosen but might not be completely well put together, is there one of our portfolios that you would rather have him use given his goal?
If he just retains his international allocation and keep that at something like 20%, because right now he's investing about 40,000, another 10-15,000 incremental investment. So keep 20% in these 2 funds. And 80% into our aggressive growth portfolio or our growth portfolio, that should take care of it. And in fact, 1 or 2 funds from his current portfolio will also be part of one of our portfolio, any of these 2 portfolios. So he should try and reduce his tax liability while making such a change. But he will be better off mapping his investment to one of our portfolios.
All right, on your screen right now are our aggressive portfolio and our growth portfolio. Write that down. If you have any more questions, you can get back in touch with us. Our email ID is on your screen right now. I have time for one question. Hasib has written in, Dhirendra, from Hyderabad, 24 years old, young man. He tells us he has a demat account. He wants to know if we should put that money in mutual funds or in direct equity. Now, this is a question a lot of young people are asking. What would you like him to do? For
a 24-year-old ready with 2 lakh rupees and a demat account, he will be excited about making investment and doing something extraordinary. He should divide his money. Keep 20,000 rupees for trying your hand and learn on the way. Learn while and gain experience. Rest of the money, put it into a junior Nifty ETF or the Nifty ETF. These are the low-cost diversified vehicle. And maybe don't put that 1,80,000 at one go. Spread it over the next 6 to 9 months, and you will understand. You'll understand the value of methodical investment.
All right. If you have any more questions for Dhirendra Kumar, write to us. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen. Dhirendra, thank you so much for spending time with us this week. We look forward to having you back again next week. Welcome back. You're watching Investors Guide on ET Now. Thank you for staying with us. Gaurav Mashruwala joins us to answer all of the questions you sent in during the week. Gaurav, thank you for joining us. Our first question comes in from Shaurya. The monthly income of 60,000 rupees. He puts 60,000 every year in the Jeevan Saral policy, 1,000 rupees in the HDFC tax fund and the Primeka Ultra Short-Term Bond Fund. He invests 50,000 rupees in his public provident fund and 4,000 every month in a recurring deposit. He also pays 13,000 rupees on his credit card as a bill every month. He wants to know what he should do to streamline his portfolio, be able to save more and be able to invest more. First of all, for someone who has a 13,000 rupee credit card bill, does it make sense for him to be investing 4,000 rupees in a recurring deposit every month? Because a recurring deposit will give him 8% and the credit card will charge him up to 40%. What should he do first? Would you like him to first knock off his credit card bill entirely?
If it is revolving credit that you are having, then please pay off that money first. In fact, even if it means liquidating some of your other assets or fixed deposit or recurring or whatever it is, because any kind of revolving credit on your credit card will does attract an interest of about 30 to 36%, and there could be service charge, etc. So you are ending up paying about 40% interest, and that is nowhere prudent. So first and foremost, repay that credit card debt if it's there. Once that's taken care of, then you may want to look at creating a contingency fund, keep certain amount of money there. You haven't given a lot of detail about your health insurance. So if you don't have that, another thing that you want to do is you want to purchase health insurance for yourself. Since you are young, I'm assuming there are no dependents. But if there are dependents in terms of parents, siblings, then health insurance for them as well. And if you have dependents, then obviously you'll require life insurance. Now, once this is taken care of, which means once you've paid back your credit card debt, there is health cover, life insurance, then you think of saving. If your financial goals are long term, 7, 8, 9 years away, then you may want to consider doing a SIP into an equity fund. If they are near-term near-term goals, then you may want to consider doing either a debt-based mutual fund. The recurring deposit in that case could be okay. And for interim period, make a combination of both debt and equity.
Our next question comes in from Rohit, who writes in saying he's been investing in the new pension system. He wants to now quit his investment and take his money out. He sees no benefit in it whatsoever. What is the procedure to take his money out of the NPS? First of all, Gaurav, NPS is young, it's evolving. Does it make sense for him to quit at this point? Also, given the lock-in, is he allowed to quit at all?
Rohit, you have not mentioned completely when did you invest in an NPS scheme and what kind of account you have. Because if it's a core or the main NPS account, then there were certain restrictions that were there from an NPS scheme to withdraw. There's also NPS Lite where the restrictions were less. So depending on which part of NPS you have invested money and when have you done it, you need to take a call. Also, if you have not invested in NPS for more than 1 or 2 years, or if it's not there since inception, it could take little more time, more so if you have taken exposure to equity portion as well. So simply answering your query as to how do you straight away withdraw, well, that's not too difficult. There are certain formats and certain requisitions that you need to give and you get your money out. But you need to answer questions like how many years have you stayed invested? Is there equity component in it? Is your money in main NPS account or is it an NPS Lite account? And based on that, you'll have to take a decision.
All right, Gaurav, thank you so much for answering our questions this week. If you have a question about saving, spending or investing, write to us. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen. If you're a woman watching, remember we're very partial to women investors. We'll definitely take your question on the show. You'll find a copy of the show on our Facebook page and you can reach me on Twitter. Thanks so much for watching.